りおしまい。
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Get the Mic, the only show where your host on the left, Owl,
and your host on the right, Brock,
dissect fiction for its mythological significance. On this episode, we're talking about Dragon Ball as usual, although we are getting to the end of the original run of Dragon Ball. Just so everyone's aware, we only have about 30 episodes left. So, on this episode, which is called Nyoibou's Secrets and numbered 123, we're going to go ahead and get started. But before we do, if you like what you hear, please give us a like. Subscribe to our channel. We upload new episodes Mondays and Thursdays to YouTube and Tuesdays and Fridays to Rumble. Additionally, we've been uploading a bit of new content concerning Dark Souls and Bloodborne and things like that. So if you like that kind of stuff, please check out those videos on our channel. Anything else to add before we get started, Brock?
Nope.
Perfect. Let's go ahead and commence with this analysis. So, after Goku departs, Tien begins to navigate his way out of the war zone. But he runs into the rest of the Go crew instead, that being Launch, Bulma, and Yamcha. Bulma tells the news stations that the world is safe again, causing the populace of Earth to rejoice. Meanwhile, Goku finally makes it back to Korin Tower just as the Go crew return to Kame House. However, the seed of evil, Ma Jr., is found by an elderly couple. And so, there's a couple things to address here. First thing I want to address is Launch pointing out Tien whenever they're kind of all trying to get back home.
Yeah, the connection between Launch and Tien.
Even Blue Launch now.
Yep.
We didn't really see that before because Blonde Launch has really taken over since like the end of since like the 22nd Budokai, right? It's all been Blonde Launch. I don't think we've seen Blue Launch since.
Occasionally, but mostly not.
Mostly not. And so here it's Blue Launch, and she's still making that connection. In fact, they're like.
And the reason she's Blue Launch, right, is because Tien is injured.
Mm-hmm. That nurturing side of it is coming to the front instead of and that's kind of what Blonde Launch is wanting from Tien is that masculine yin to her yang, other way around.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's but that's not needed right now because we see that he needs that nurturing side of the maternal spirit at this moment.
Also, it's not in relation to Goku. Normally I would say like, Goku is injured and he needs to be nurtured, and whenever that happens, typically you have Blue Launch instead of Blonde Launch around. But Goku has transcended
the
that.
need for that, yeah.
in the sense that he's a spiritual being now. He doesn't need a physical instantiation of the maternal spirit or the feminine spirit to carry him along anymore because of what we're going to see in the next few episodes.
Well, I mean, and we'll see later on how he reconnects with the feminine spirit, which is
Mhm.
actually kind of beautiful. But we'll get to it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Launch is pointing out of that because they're like sneaking around. They think Piccolo might still be alive, so they're being really careful. And Bulma's afraid, and then Launch just screams for no reason apparently, and then you kind of see Tien coming, and so they take him back to Kame House. Now, the next thing we see is Bulma telling the news stations that the world is safe again, and the reporter, the anchor, whoever it is, asks her what the name of the hero is, and what does she say, Brock?
The defender of truth and justice.
Yes, and this is to say that those people that are like, Goku's not a hero, he's only out for himself. It's like, nope. Early on, it's set up to not be that way. And that's why
I see this all the time, actually, when people are like, well, Goku actually just fights because he likes fighting and he wants to get stronger.
yeah, like Wukong.
And
Wukong
the reason that Goku fights Piccolo at all isn't
is
for that
not
reason.
to get stronger, exactly.
If he was selfish, he would have failed when he went down into the cave, right? We saw specifically he didn't want to just train and get stronger down there because that was what was offered to him.
Yes, the eternity of training, and even Yamcha's like, and I'll challenge you at the next tournament. It's like, you can have everything. You can have this.
You can even have
All you have
becoming
to do-
stronger and climbing the hierarchy.
Yeah,
and
all
of
you have
that.
to do is give up the path. That's it.
But the heroic path is not just about becoming stronger. Now, it's a part of it. The way that you engage with it makes you stronger.
And this is where and why this last saga that we covered with Piccolo, King Piccolo, diverges from the whole like, oh, Dragon Ball's theme is self-improvement. Dragon Ball's theme is self-improvement. That's it. That's all it is. That's all there is. That's the only theme in the show.
I don't know. That's such a reductive analysis, and I'm constantly seeing this thing where people think that they're saying something profound by being reductive, where they feel like I've boiled the story down or the themes down to this really simplistic thing, and therefore I've somehow through the process of summarizing it succinctly, now I have contributed something, but you've actually taken something away because this is a really rich story. It's not something that you can just boil down to saying like it's just a story about self-betterment.
Yeah, because obviously we see in this saga in particular, it's not.
It's explicitly
Even
not,
the
actually.
Red Ribbon is not about that. The Red Ribbon arc and what Goku ultimately discovers on that arc is not about self-improvement. He becomes stronger as a byproduct of his correct path forward, not the other way around.
And the way that he becomes stronger mostly is not through fighting, right?
Yes.
He becomes stronger by embodying a higher pattern than he currently embodies, not by fighting. Like, he
Now,
doesn't
obviously,
fight
we're not
Korin.
talking about Super because that's dumb.
No, that's dumb. But he doesn't go up there and train with Korin. He doesn't fight Korin for 3 days and then go beat Tao Pai Pai. Instead, he finds himself and centers himself and finds a better way to orient himself so that he can defeat
And learns how to
Malice.
map. Yeah, learns how to map spirits on himself.
Right. And he also, well, I guess to be more specific, he learns to map others onto himself and himself onto others so he can identify transpersonally.
Yeah, and what I meant by spirits is like he can understand patterns of being and then integrate them into his own, let's say, understanding.
Yeah. And it's not
And
just
that's why he
for the
has
sake
to-
of him becoming stronger.
Well, I think let's mention this. I think that's why he stands under villains when he allows them to like beat him up and stuff, which we
so that
see
he can understand
often.
them.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So, what we were getting to though is not just the defender of all that, because we had a little tangent there, but also Bulma refuses to give his name, and this. There's a couple facets to this because it's Bulma. You would think she would, except Oolong's not with her. She's instantiated in the real world. She kind of realizes the stakes, especially being where she is at like ground zero of this explosion. And they saw the explosion, don't forget, from the airplane. And she's super afraid right now, too. Well, whenever she's sneaking around. And so it's really goes to show how the feminine spirit buttresses that of the hero, because she doesn't give his name, supporting the heroic spirit of not expecting or not receiving, um, what do I want to say, earthly rewards for acting in a way that's proper.
There's the other aspect too, that a good deed should be done for the sake of itself and not for
Yeah, that's yeah.
recognition. And Bulma does have this wisdom that she has always brought in the story. And so here, what she does is she tells the world the good news, but doesn't give Goku's identity. And of course, Goku is found out.
Well, and what I mean too by Oolong's not there is she's manifest in the real world such that Oolong is a part of her. She's more integrated now than we've seen her in a long time.
Yes, and whenever Oolong's present, she's less
You
integrated.
can see that, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
When Oolong is there, she is, and especially how much like screen time Oolong's taking up is the more disintegrated she is.
but to bring it back to Goku being called the defender of truth and justice, it shows you explicitly what that means, because whenever Goku defeats Piccolo, he reintroduces justice into the world, and then we see, as everyone's celebrating, a criminal celebrates as he's put back into handcuffs because, and it's like that Dostoevsky sort of thing, right? When
And by that you mean in Crime and Punishment,
right, it,
when Raskolnikov turns himself in.
right, your inner
Yes.
daemon tells you that what you're doing is wrong, and you long for justice for yourself when you know that you're in the wrong. And this, even a criminal sees that it's good for him to be in the proper place in the world. And so there's a worldwide celebration that justice is brought back into the world by the defeat of Piccolo. And so Goku being a defender of justice is to say that he's a defender of the concept of justice
And
itself.
it's not just justice, because it's also truth.
Right.
Because remember what we saw Piccolo's effect on the world. We saw like the kids trying to be criminals, right? Falsely trying to be criminals, right? Their proper place had been disrupted in the world.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't be truly kids as they should be because they've been exposed to this malice.
Well, let's talk about truth in that sense, because to sin is to miss the mark, right? And truth is the opposite of that. Is to hit your mark. The truth is in service of things being represented in the physical world as they should be in a spiritual sense. And so a
When
kid
things
should be doing
align or
kid
are
things,
integrated, right?
or or like a criminal should be in prison. There's a place for everything in this sort of cosmic picture.
And that's exactly what Piccolo was trying to destroy, is the cosmic order of things, not just like
Order,
the king's
truth.
castle.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why he's operating on the realm of ideas. And so when he does that, and when it's finally kind of eliminated, even the criminals understand that that was a bad thing to happen. Even though Launch in the beginning, she's like, hey, this guy doesn't sound so bad. But I mean, Launch later on does turn on that,
Mhm.
because she realizes how bad it actually is and how bad it can be when hell is on Earth.
Right. And that's just sort of a necessary blindness to the way that Launch sees the world, because she's a much more primordial sort
Yeah.
of spirit, so to speak. But not to go on any tangents about Launch, I think that it's significant though that justice and truth are tied together in the way the translation points that
Oh,
out,
definitely.
because there is a truthfulness in acknowledging what your place is in the world, acknowledging that you have a pattern to play out that hits the mark.
Well, what is that? I don't remember who made this quote, but it's actually, let me look it up while you
But
fill.
when people don't have a place in the world, then it's chaos, right? It's to say that the categories are broken down and people don't have, I call it a pattern, but they don't have something to aim towards in order not to sin, right? In order not to hit the mark. They don't have a mark to aim at. And so putting truth back in, because the truth or the logos creates order, does away with that chaos, does away with the uncertainty that the world has under Piccolo's reign, right?
Right. And to let's say elucidate this point a little more, I'm going to read from
Ecclesiastes.
I don't know how to say it. Say it again.
Ecclesiastes.
Ecclesiastes 3. A time for everything. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones, and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. So if it wasn't clear that this is a deeply religious and spiritual idea that everything has its place under heaven, there you go.
That I really like that you read that specifically out, because that's going to be the theme of the next few episodes as well, as Goku's sort of reckoning with that reality, the fact that there is a place for everything, good and bad, right?
Yes.
Well,
And
I say good and bad in the sense that, like, creation and dissolution, the two poles, the
well,
duality of reality
and Goku's
itself.
going to be enlightened to the fact that the seed of evil is still alive.
Right.
And that
And that it
goes
has
in
a
with
place
this.
within the cosmic
Yeah,
world.
that goes exactly.
And that's how this section actually ends, with the discovery of the seed of evil still being there in the world.
Yes.
Which is that the elderly couple finds him, the woman finds him in the washing down the river, right?
And
Which
they
is a very
think, yes,
religious idea as well.
yes, and they think it's like a Moses child.
Well,
Like
they say specifically, maybe Kami gave this
Yes.
child to us to look after, and that's a very Moses-like thing, right? Where the
Yes.
God sends an outsider down the river to be inherited as an orphan to play a specific role in the world. And this is, when they see it, they say, maybe Kami gave us this child, and they don't realize that they're both right and wrong in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
because they think that it's a benevolent child given by Kami, but it's actually a malevolent spirit given by Kami instead.
Yes. And that the seed of evil is not yet destroyed. Or, well, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So, yes, so that really encompasses a lot of their celebrations and things like that. And so Goku finally makes it back to Korin's tower, and we see the seed of evil, like we said. So I think we're actually ready to move to the next. Let's see. There we go. So Korin tells Goku that he would have revived all the people killed by Piccolo with the Dragon Balls, but he is surprised to hear of Shenron's death. Suddenly, though, he changes his tone, telling Goku that he can be the first person to meet Kami. Yajirobe mocks the idea, saying that Kami doesn't exist, but Korin assures them that he can reach Kami's temple far above the clouds, using his power pole. Goku reaches for the pole, but is aghast to find it missing. He calls the Nimbus and races off towards King's Castle. Well, where King's Castle once was.
Right.
But yeah. And so there's a couple things here. So I do want to mention the all-knowing Korin didn't know that Shenron had been killed. And this is actually very pivotal, because the idea of Shenron being out of the world is kind of directly addressed by the characters at this moment in the story. And what that means is the ability to gain wisdom through the righteous confrontation of chaos is gone, is taken away because of the demoralization that Piccolo instantiated in the world.
Specifically by, let's say, the leveling of King's Castle.
Yes. And so that needs to be repaired, but no mortal can repair it. And I like how Goku says there's a person that created the Dragon Balls, and it's like, no, it's not really a person, but I mean,
pattern.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're gonna get to that, I think,
an embodiment,
very, very soon.
This whole part is awesome, right? Because what Goku has to do so that he can go and meet Kami, so that he can try to fix this problem, is he has to do something that he's done before, which is go back and recover the Nyoibou after he lost it at the end of a battle like this.
Right. And
this is how we ended Season 1. Because Goku loses his tail and then runs off tripping to go find the Nyoibou after he lost it in the castle being destroyed when he defeated Pilaf.
Right, but this time it is his spiritual father that's telling him that he needs it and it's important. Right. He also tells him that he is the one that gave it to Roshi, who gave it to Gohan, who gave it to Goku. So if anyone was ever curious about the whole heirloom idea, it's been there from the beginning.
We've pointed this out several times, that the Nyoibou has represented this connection to your ancestry, but it's explicated by Korin in this moment talking to Goku and telling him this has been passed down from sort of the highest spiritual instantiation to the spiritual father to the earthly father to you, the hero, right?
Yes. The
And
superordinate spiritual father, the earthly spiritual father, the earthly father to you.
and we've also talked about how it's similar to the idea of that pole, the center, and the axis mundi, right?
Yes.
And he says specifically here, if you have that, then you can ascend higher, right? Then you can go up to a higher spiritual level.
But only if the proper respect is given, because he also says that Yajirobe cannot go there.
Yes.
He says that only those that are pure of heart and are, let's say, can pass Kami's test of character are able to ascend the tower. No one has been able
You
to
mean
do it.
Korin's test of character?
Well, it's
I mean, I guess it is Kami's test through Korin.
yeah. I mean, that's what he says. It's Kami's test,
Right, right.
But you're right. I mean, it is. Korin gives him the bell, all that.
Yeah.
But that's what we mean. Like, not anyone can just go here, even if they have access to the Nyoibou. It's because the proper respect has been given to the Nyoibou, and additionally, how Goku used it in the fight against Piccolo. Right.
Right.
It was able to support him in a way that he could not support himself.
It does that throughout the story, actually.
Yes. And so you're right. And so here, where we're at this point of meaning, there's further depth to achieve in that. And so Goku must ascend further into the heavenly realm, where it's all ideas and all of it is based on that pattern of being instead of individual mapping, which is what he's done with Korin. It's going to be a superordinate version of that.
Now, I want to get a little bit more specific about it, too, because I think part of the reason now Goku has lost the Nyoibou is tied into the fact that he doesn't have a spiritual father to connect to. And that is that Roshi is dead.
Yes.
In the world right now. And he doesn't have his physical instantiation of his father to lean on because he is dead. And above that is Korin, but Korin can only offer him the insight that he's already given to him. And so Goku has to grasp again how far that connection can go, right? Because he can't just look toward. He doesn't have a spiritual father now to look towards.
How deep the wisdom of the ages is, right? And we've seen Goku go down as well. Like, I like to think, and this is not at all, it doesn't make any sense at all physically, but I like to think that the jars he goes into to find this ultra divine water is under the tower. Because if you think of it like that, it all lines up, right?
There's a polarity to it, right?
Yes. And so, but the idea too, that not only is all that Kami test that we talked about, the ancestral connection that happens with the Nyoibou, but also the fact that we learn that Kami created the Dragon Balls in Shenron. So, who could possibly create the potentiality for chaos to be turned into order?
Well, that's what we're going to find out.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but I wanted to reference it that way because it leads into Yajirobe thinking no one can do that.
Of course, Yajirobe would think that, though.
Right. Only based
and that's
in
because
the
Yajirobe
earthly realm. Yeah.
is earthly. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, which is that he is a foolish version of Goku who does not have the spiritual enlightenment that Goku does. Now, he's gained some by being able to get here, but that is only what he's gained by carrying Goku with him.
Yeah.
It's not of his own. It's not a representation of his own enlightenment as much as his encounter with Goku has given him the opportunity to be at least this enlightened. But he doesn't go further on his own because of what his character represents. And so he couldn't even conceptualize that.
And it's to say too that like Goku's growth could have been stunted in the same way. But so we said Yajirobe, perfect. So now we're at the point where you were saying like the reason Goku loses the Nyoibou. Now, I wanted to just mention that the idea of hell on earth will or can separate people in their suffering from the wisdom of the past. And that's kind of what Piccolo does in the fight. Meaning, um, instantiating a hell on earth, and this has happened in history too. Think about the fall of the Roman Empire, prevents people from connecting ideas from antiquity or their ancestry into their modern life and integrating that, right? And
Hmm.
so we have this big separation when these cataclysmic things happen and hell on earth is really created in the world, where knowledge is then lost as well. And so, what Goku, by experiencing the hell on earth, what Goku loses is that knowledge of the ancestral being important. After all, he doesn't pick up his power pole before he goes back. And so, he kind of has to retrace his steps and then reappreciate that value before he's able to ascend Kami's tower. And when we talk about Kami, we'll get into why that is.
Well, I want to just say specifically, this is why I called back to the Pilaf situation before, because that.
Go ahead.
Okay, I don't know when it cut off, but the reason that I wanted to mention the Pilaf situation in the first season specifically was that the it's a microcosm of what happens in this sort of final confrontation, where the the stakes back then were Bulma losing her connection, or being consumed by her loss of connection to the spiritual father that she has,
After being banished from the garden, let's say,
and
yeah.
being trapped in Pilaf's castle,
In
right?
the desert, yeah.
And then the castle is destroyed, and Goku has his tail cut off and loses that connection, and then trips his way back into the ruins to find this and brings it back. Now that's what he's doing again, because he's lost that connection to the spiritual father in the same way that he had his tail cut off before, and needs to go reestablish it again, but for the world instead of just for Bulma and Yamcha, right?
Right, yeah, it's it's a superordinate version of what we saw
So what
before.
happens here was set up back in the first season, right? This is an
Yes.
expansion of that idea.
Which is actually a really good tell of good storytelling. And now, let me rephrase that. Of mythological storytelling,
Yeah,
because
capital G good storytelling.
because the referential, like, for example, Bloodborne references like everything has to do with everything in Bloodborne. And that's because everything is integrated. Now, I think also, and I don't know because I haven't read all of it, but the Bible also references itself
Yeah.
all over the place. And I think Dr. Peterson had it was either him or someone else that was saying, like,
It was the original hyperlink text,
yes,
right?
exactly. And so, um seeing that, right, it's it builds on itself and it establishes its mythology and it establishes its meaning through multiple iterations of the same idea,
Right.
which we see here as well, which is this multiple iteration of Goku being separated from the ancestral wisdom that is given to him as a boon in the form of the Nyoibou.
Yeah, it's that idea of spiraling out. It's a microcosm, macrocosm situation here.
Yes. And so that kind of leaves us off with the next one, which is upon his arrival, Goku is confronted by the press and the police, all wanting to ask him about his vanquishing of Piccolo, King Piccolo. Finding no leads, and wanting to get away from the press, Goku goes to Baba to ask where the pole is. Baba tells his fortune for free, and they find the heirloom in Kame House. Zooming off to that place, Baba comments about his heroism, Goku's heroism. Once he arrives on the island, though, Goku is greeted by his friends, but his mind is focused on finding the Nyoibou. Launch suddenly remembers that she used it as a broom and gives the heirloom back to Goku. The young hero speeds off, returning to Korin Tower and his destiny. And so here, firstly, everyone wants to know about Goku. They're trying to take pictures of him and stuff. I just want to briefly mention this, that Goku has no interest at all in doing any of that. He wants no recognition for what he's done, and he is actually very his sights are set on finding the Nyoibou. That's all he can see right now. And
That's where his attention is
it's
focused.
almost
Yeah.
literally all he can see, because we see a first person shot of this later, and Goku like looks at where the Noibo was supposed to be, and it like zooms in on it, and it's like, this is all Goku's seeing, right? It's made really apparent. And so like he just tries to get away from the press. He wants none of that. They ask him like his birthday and his blood type and all that, and it's played as a gag. But then he goes to Baba's, which I do want to mention some things about Baba's. So when he arrives, he's like, I'll fight your 5 fighters, bring them on quick. And she's like, I'm not going to have my fighters fight you. You killed King Piccolo.
Who would want to fight you?
Right, exactly. She's like, I'll tell your fortune for free. And this is to say that the boon granted here from Baba being the, what do I want to say? The fate archetype that she is, who can gaze into the future and the past. That, let's say, the ability to connect with that, Goku has made such a connection by saving the world that he has gained the ability to call upon this power whenever he needs to.
He has also fulfilled her prophecy, right? She
Yes.
said that he would save the world. He did. He came back to her and gained the boon that he earned
Right.
by fulfilling her prophecy.
Exactly.
And it's a very complex idea, and I think it's tied into that sort of it's tied into time as an archetypal concept, and I think it would be good to have a conversation about that later. But Goku can call upon that. It's almost like having a principality over time itself, because Goku can now call upon the future and know where he's supposed to go. Not only does he have the Noibo to carry him to, or not the Noibo, sorry, but the Nimbus to carry him to where that is supposed to be, but he can actually call upon this this idea of being able to look into the future and see where his treasure is, and also map out where the treasure would be.
Let me say it's not his power to do it, but he's made such progress in his spirit, let's say his spiritual strength, or I don't want to say spiritual strength. He's made such a progress that the archetypal crone, let's say, is a benefactor to him. He's aligned himself in such a way that he has gained the respect of the archetypal crone,
which is the highest physical instantiation in this world of Mother Nature, right?
And yes, and we see too that Roshi did not gain that admiration. How does she talk about her brother? Right.
Well, she's still trying to collect debts on her brother, right? Which is it's very different from what's going on with Goku, because one of the things we saw early on with her is that she never forgets a debt owed to her.
Never forgets, never forgives. That's a crone, right?
Yeah.
Like, exactly.
And yet does a favor for Goku and doesn't collect any debt for what he's doing. And so it's to say that actually what he does is benefits Mother Nature, and so she propels him onward, right, in every sense.
Well, and I was going to mention, right, that it becomes a reciprocal thing.
Yeah.
And so now Baba is integrated into the capital G good. And whenever Goku, or let's say those allied with Goku, need to call upon that instantiation of sight from the mother's point of view, they can do so. And we see this later on, because Goku doesn't really call her in Z. We see her arrive, and I mean, we'll get into that later, but she arrives to give that sight.
Yeah, she divines things for the other characters who are aligned with Goku.
Right. And so she is, and that's the thing. She's such a force that she's able to do that, and it's because Goku has earned that everyone benefits from it now. It's the raising of the human spirit by the individual, let's say. And so now Baba actually will see, let's say, goodness in the rest of the world. We see her leave her palace after
through
this.
Goku.
Yes, exactly, because of that.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to put into words, but it's to say that Goku has granted a sight to Baba, even though originally the relationship they had with her was to gain sight from her. And so when you say it's reciprocal, it really is in that sense because Goku's sight, and we were just talking
Right.
about
Yep.
Goku's sight, his ability to focus on the most important thing is so powerful here that Baba benefits from it.
Exactly. And because of that, Baba helps him. And we actually see Bob help him in the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai as well, which was pretty cool. But that was a filler episode, I think.
Hmm.
I don't know if that was in the manga. Anyways, so he goes to Baba and then he leaves Baba's, like we said, finding where the power pole is. And where would the ancestral knowledge be but in the house of the spiritual father?
Which is
It,
also
it's all.
Kame House, which is on an island in the middle of the water. And I've kind of made this analog before where it's sort of like a brain. It's this place that's almost eh, how would I say? It's almost not in a physical space because it's
Well,
always
that's why Oolong and Par like live there.
yeah. And but that's to say that it still is within, right? It still is something that Goku has. It's not that he's lost it per se, but the
He didn't think to look there.
but he didn't think that it would be something that he's retained, that the people who care about him and that he's sort of saved and that he's redeemed have have taken it back and put it where it's supposed to be for him, which is within the house of the Father,
And
right?
he's not the only
Within
one that can set order
the
to the world,
and
right?
when I say the house of the Father, I mean like the house of the Father as such.
Yes. And it's because of Goku's raising of the spirit of humanity that his friends, the Go crew, are also able to align with that value. And Tien gets the pole and takes it back so that he can still have it. And that's written before we even learn that it goes up to Kami's temple. That happens before we learn that. And it's to say that Toriyama's just not just flying by the seat of his pants.
But not only is it brought it's a two-part thing, right? Tien does what he's supposed to do with it, which is take it back to the spiritual father's house, but then Launch
Oh, yes.
uses it
Yes.
to clean, which is to say that it's her way of creating order out of chaos. That is how she would use the pole, right?
Yes.
That's the only thing she would think to do with the pole. And so
Yes.
Goku finds it being used in the father's house in the service of creating order out of chaos.
Yes. That being a dirty bathroom,
Yeah.
let's say.
Well, that's how Launch uses it.
Yeah, no,
because she
exactly.
creates
It's her
order.
manifestation of it, right?
Yeah.
And this is to say too, that Launch is superordinate because of this, because she's able to see the value in the pole to begin with, right? I don't think Bulma ever takes the pole and does anything with it.
No, the pole saves Bulma sometimes
Right,
because of Goku.
but Launch understands the value of it, and so she uses it as soon as it enters the house. Or she
Right.
puts it, let me rephrase that because there's a better way to say it. She puts it to use as soon as it comes into the house.
Right.
That being the knowledge and the ancestral wisdom bound up in Roshi and Gohan, Grandpa Gohan.
Yes. And so Goku has to go and then put it towards a higher purpose after he finds that it is serving a good purpose, but it's not serving the best purpose it could be serving.
But what is the ultimate purpose that your connection with the wisdom of the ancestry brings you? We'll answer that question.
Find out next time.
Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, so I think we're at a pretty good end. That was a pretty good wrap up. So, if you liked what you heard, please give us a like. Subscribe to our channel. We upload new episodes Mondays and Thursdays to YouTube, Tuesdays and Fridays to Rumble. I've been your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
We hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening.
I told you I wasn't going to go easy on you. You're on your own.
You can't leave me. That's cruel.
Hey, guess what? Sometimes, kid, life is cruel. And don't you forget it. both in body and in mind.
But I'm afraid.